Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode at Coco's Kingdom. It's been a while since I last posted with the whole adjusting to work and on top of that the whole coronavirus and staying home. I have had a lot more time to make videos, however I just haven't got to it. I feel like for some reason I just don't have the motivation. On top of that, like most of the places to do projects are closed. I mean, Home Depot and Lowe's are open, but I don't feel like it'd be fair to go out just to get stuff to do projects when everyone should be staying home. I guess it's just kind of like a bummer that I can't really get anything done that I want to at the moment. So I'm gonna try to do what I actually can, which is the second 11-gallon bowl, the one I wanted to get for shrimp or some of the dwarf crayfish. So basically in today's video, I'm just gonna get the tank filled. It already has aqua soil. I'm using 88 Amazonia, and I'm gonna show you guys how I set up the sponge filters and the equipment, because you guys always ask like, oh, like is it heated and filtered? I can show you guys how to do that, especially with the whole bowl shape. A lot of people ask like, what's the best way? I'm gonna show you how I do it. It's not necessarily the best way, but it's what works for me, and it's an option if you want to do that too. So at first I did want to try the Caridina shrimp instead of Neocaridinas, but then I remembered the hardscape I'm using is glitter rock or blue petrified wood, and it does leach a lot of mineral. I haven't like left it in RODI to see how much it leaches, but it's a very like mineral based rock. If I were to go with Caridina shrimp, it'd probably change the parameters too much to where they wouldn't really thrive and maybe even die too. Caridina shrimp are a lot more sensitive than Neos. Like Neos you can even do in my tap water, which the TDS in my tap water is like around 500. Whereas Caridina shrimp, you kind of want to keep it around like the 100 area and not have it fluctuate either. So there's a lot more to take into consideration when you're going with this kind of shrimp. The only real difference between those shrimp is like really appearance, whereas like, you know, with the Caridinas you can get like deeper colors, especially with the candy cane looking ones, which are like the crystal black shrimp or the crystal red shrimp, where it's like a pattern of white and red and black and white. Same with the shadow pandas and the wine reds. You're gonna get like a more colorful pattern with them and solid color too. You could get patterning and coloring in the Neos, but it's not as varied as the Caridinas, I would say, in my opinion, because like it's mostly just solid color shrimp, and then you have the Rillies to where like parts of their body might be clear, but it's not like an opaque white like the Caridina shrimp. I'm not even sure which Neos I want to go with yet, but I figured I can't get them if I don't have the tank set up. So I might as well set up the tank first, and then once that tank is cycled, I can choose later on what I want to get and put them right in. So just a tip before I actually do get to the bowl is when you scape bowls or around tanks in general, you're going to want to fill it with water first, because if you scape it then fill it, the scape is not going to look anything like what it did from the outside of the bowl or before water, because the distortion of the shapes is going to change how you see it with water in it. In the case of bowls, it enlarges everything. So like say you have a bowl this big and you do a scape to fill out the whole bowl, you're only going to be able to see like this area instead of like what you put in the outer area. So with filling the bowl first, you can then put your scape and focus it so you know like what scape is actually filling the whole viewpoint of the bowl. I'll take you guys over there right now. I'll show you guys how I hook up the sponge filters, how I hide them too, and then I'll get it filled and hardscaped. First, I'm going to show you guys how to set up the sponge filters. So I use these little corner filters for the bowl. It doesn't really have to be corner shaped. These ones are just like that. I also use glass U-shaped tubes, which are these right here. I'm using two old ones, this is why they're a little dirty. So they're just going to go around the bowl right there. So the airline's not really like, you know, too curved or going anywhere. It's a little neater if you use them. You don't necessarily need them. It just looks prettier in my opinion, and it's a lot more functional, so that's why I use them. The first thing I'm going to do is just drop these both in the back of the tank. That's where you keep them to get them hidden, because the plants are going to be in front, the rocks are going to be in front, and you're not really going to see them anyways. Then what I'm going to do is put the glass tubes over the bowl and then put the airline from here to here, so there's not a ton of slack and it's not like loose. There's not a bunch of airline that you're going to see in the tank either. Then after I have that done, I'm just gonna attach air line to the other side and bring it down to the gang valve where the air pump is. If you're not familiar with how a sponge filter works, basically you connect it to an air pump. It'll put air through here, which will go through the sponge and push water out here. Where the water is coming out here, it's taking up water through the outside of the sponge, where it's filtering in, getting it past bacteria, filtering dirt, and pushing clean water and air out the top. Sponge filters are a lot better if you have a ton of tanks where you can hook it up to one main air source instead of having a filter for each tank. Pros and cons to each filter. I'm not going to go into depth about it right now, but this is what I use for the bowls, and I'll show you guys how I set them up. So once I had them both in there, I was able to measure the distance and cut the airline that I needed. So you just attach these to the tubing over here. And sometimes if it is harder to get in for you, heating it up with a lighter might work. And then you just attach it right on to the little valve that's inside of the sponge filter. Sometimes it helps to take off the tube, attach it. I also like to make sure that this is the front and this is where it's going to go back, so it's not twisted around in there either. Once you get your sponge filters done, you're just going to plunk them back in the bowl. And it should be a good length to where it hangs not too high over. And it also touches the substrate. Then the last step to set up your filter is basically to lead the other side straight to the air pump, which I have on the bottom over there. So here's under the cabinet. Like I said, I have the air pump hooked up to a single gang valve. These two are going to the guppy bowl filtering this one, and then the other two will be going to the shrimp bowl. So you could filter an entire 2 tanks with just one air pump. It's a lot less energy and a lot easier in my opinion. So once you have them all hooked up, you could adjust the airflow with these little valves. So each one you can control how much air comes out, whether you want more or less, just depends on where you spin these. You could have 2 of them going higher and 2 of them going lower. It's just completely up to you. So that's basically the filtration I use for the bowls. I feel like it's easiest. You could use a canister too, but in this case you'd have to use 2 different canister filters. And in this one I can just power it to one source. Especially for shrimp because they get sucked up in filters, so sponge filters don't really have anywhere they can get stuck in. And that's why I go with sponge filters for these setups. The water is a little fuzzy, but now that it's filled, you can see exactly what I mean by everything turns huge. So those little tiny sponge filters that were in the back are now magnified and straight in the middle. I also left out a tip that I wanted to mention before, that when you do scape with bowls and you're going to do a substrate, you want to put a little bit of a thicker substrate layer than usual, probably around like 3 inches at least, because when it is like lower, you don't really see the substrate, and a lot of the plants that you're going to put in there, they kind of disappear and go off to a weird angle. Also, when you do put in substrate, most of it should be like mounted towards the middle kind of to make it look level. When it's out to the sides, it does like this scoop to where the substrate against the glass comes out further and makes everything kind of like odd looking. So a thicker substrate and substrated towards the middle of the bowl. Now I'm gonna go grab all of my blue petrified wood. I'll show you guys the the rock that I'm using. It's not actually wood, that's just what it's called. And then I'm gonna kind of start like putting them where I want them to be. So this is the rock that I'm gonna be using. It's blue petrified wood, and as you can see, there's like a ton of mineral in it. You can just see it already. I just think it's just, you know, sideways granite. That's countertop if you ask me. Anyways, it does leach a lot of minerals, so I can't use them for caradinas. If you were looking for a rock that you could use with those shrimp, your best bet is going to be Okostone or Dragonstone. It is inert and does not leach any mineral. So I'm just going to go ahead and get these rocks in and then probably call it a day after that. So it's still pretty fuzzy, but that's what I settled with. Taller in the back, smaller in the front, so when the shrimp do come out, they can like graze in a field in the front or something. This is the final setup, so both bowls are technically complete. I just need to add some more plants to that one and then get the plants on in this one. Estimated, it's probably gonna take around a month to cycle. That's just usually like the cycle time with 88 Amazonia or aquasoil in general. So shrimp do not need a heater unless your temperatures are going like really low. If you want to add a heater, it's really simple. I have it in this one. You just throw it over the back. So sometimes when the temperature gets a little higher, they're a little more likely to reproduce, from what I've read and also in my experience. So this is the completed escape. The last step would basically be to turn on the air pump and then just let it run. We're just gonna plug in the air pump. So it's currently allowing air into the left bowl, but the right ones are closed. So for that one, you're just gonna loosen these here until you get airflow at the top. Just like that. And same with the one on the right. Sometimes it does take a while. It's like a lot of pressure that it has to build up before it actually starts releasing air. There you go. So when you first set up these sponge filters, they make like a glugging sound until they can actually get like a good stream going on. So it's gonna be like this for a little bit, then it'll turn into bubbles like that after a while. So when you add another tank to your gang valve and you actually open the valve, you're gonna wanna make sure that the flow in the other tank is still a good amount to where the filter is still running, so the bacteria doesn't die. Filtered water is getting through to the whole tank, and it's just working in general too, because the air pressure does drop when you open another valve. One frequently asked question, if you did make it to the end of the video, like where do you get the bowls? I got these two from Goodwill. I've seen some other like, you know, semi-large bowls, not exactly this size, and like home stores. You can find them at Ross too. I feel like it was a 1 in a million chance that I found them because they are huge. They're literally like over 15 inches in diameter. Like the ones you see at Michael's, I personally wouldn't use those. They're very thin glass. I've heard of them breaking on a lot of people, and they're only about like 3 to 5 gallons too. If you do have any other questions, please feel free to drop them down in the comments. I'll try my best to get to them and answer them. So that is going to be the end of this video. If you did enjoy it, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Besides that, I hope everyone has an amazing day. Bye everyone.